Reminder that the world does not revolve around me or us. I know, it doesn't. I hate to break it to you. This stuff out of the way. It's like, no, you're fine.
Madam Chairman, we're live.
All right, thank you so much. And we will call this meeting back to order. It is 1:15. For those of you who have just joined us, welcome. This is Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources. And our next item agenda is Wyoming Gaming Commission. Director Moore, welcome, sir. Please join us. And any of your compadres you have with you. So.
Thank you, committee members. My name is Charlie Moore. I'm the director of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. With me today, directly to my right, I have David Carpenter, Sports Wagering Project Manager. Next to David, I have President Bob Davis, Commissioner. And then next to Bob, we have Dick Cura, Commissioner as well. I believe Commissioner Wildcat is going to be joining us shortly if she hadn't. And then also, I believe we have Nick Laramendi, Special Agent, joining us via YouTube.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. And thank you, everybody who is coming or is beside you and online. We appreciate you guys taking the time to be here before. Yeah, God bless you, Chairman. All right, Director Moore, the floor is yours.
Well, again, thank you very much for having us here today. I believe your first agenda item is an update. Is that what you'd like me to go update you on the skill-based amusement games? Is that
Sure,
what you'd like?
absolutely, yes.
Thank you. From our last meeting, we have approved 3 of the 5 denied applicants. We did furnish you, we were provided some questions for you to have there. We've done that. We have still 2 that are outstanding. We have not received lab reports from either one of those. And if we need to expand on that, Special Agent Laramendi would be more than willing to do that if you'd like him to on the skill-based.
Okay.
Yeah. Nick, if you'd like to expand on some of on the skill-based update.
Mr. Laramendi, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My apologies for not being able to be there in person. So going through some of the questions that were raised, I know one of the questions was some numbers as far as how many skill-based amusement game and applicants were approved in 2020 compared to the new approvals in 2021. In 2020, there were a total of 10 vendors approved. Those 10 vendors comprised of 306 operators with 836 total terminals throughout the state. So far in 2021, the commission has approved 3 additional vendors with 12 new operators and adding 43 more terminals to that total count. So that's 879 total terminals approved to date. Additionally, there are 2 other vendors that we're continuing to work with. One of them we're still waiting a lab report for. The other one we're waiting on a lab report as well as the background information that is yet to be submitted.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. One thing too, just so you know, Nick would have come with us today. He's currently in quarantine for a couple more days, and we've got a couple staff members that are in that situation right now. So it's been an interesting, as we all know. Thank you for that. The tax revenue that's been generated to this point, January 1st, and there's a correction in my handout. I noted that I had there January 1st, 2020. It's 2021 through June 27th of 21. The school foundation program, 852,024 cents. The city distribution, 479,966.49. The county distribution, 573,885 $234,074, and then the gaming commission account is $234,189. Since inception, the total tax from the skill-based amusement games has been over $3.8 million, and that's for the last 2 years. And again, as Mr. Laramendi stated, the number of operators that we have. At this point, we are working on the rules. We have just completed the rules on the online sports wagering, and we will be jumping right into the rules for the skill-based amusement games. And as the crest that was earlier this week, we're looking at the designations of the areas and working on some of the 21, no one under 21, and working on that. I did submit that to you in your handout today, the rules that we have proposed in that. And so we would hope to have fairly comprehensive set of rules by the end of September for the public to consume.
Okay. And the online sports wagering, how's, are you, yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, could we just make sure for our understanding, so end of September, you hope to have some draft rules that you can release to the public to start the rule promulgation? Would just walk me through your timeline of when you hope to have those skill rules going and done.
Yeah. Chairman Flitner, co-chairman Ellis, yes, that is the plan. That would be the process to have those ready by the end of September for consumption. I'm hoping to have prior to that stakeholder meetings to everyone can work on it, chime in, and have an opportunity. The path that I think has worked well is the same process that we utilize for the online sports wagering. It seemed to work really well with the stakeholder input in that. So I believe we will have our first draft at the end of the month. Yes.
Madam Chair,
Sure.
just to follow up. So you release it and then 45 days of public comment. Can you just walk me through when you hope to have them out or done and fully in effect?
Thank you. The first step will be to draft our first draft of rules. We will allow the public to start giving their input into that. It won't be the formal 45-day public comment at that point. We've seen that we prefer to have a lot of the rules vetted before they even get into the 45-day public comment, allow the public to help us make our corrections and try to formulate the best set of rules we possibly can. Once that set is done, which would be then sometime, I'm hoping that would be the end of October, we would be prepared to put those into the 45-day public comment and start that formal process. That would be the goal. And if we can shorten up that period, we will as well. We will do these as quickly as we possibly can with the staffing levels and things that we have. I'm not sure if you'd like me to, I can follow up with the committee and give you our timeline for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Moore.
What next, Madam Chairwoman, would you like me to address sports wagering at this point now?
Sure. Yeah. Give us an update on how that stands and then if you'll be able to meet your deadline with that
Yes.
as well.
Thank you. I'll have David go into it a little further, but we expect to have the emergency rules signed yet this week. That is the plan for that. We'll have a commission meeting later next week, sometime next week. We're looking at having this up and operational if the companies want to by the 1st. So we will make our deadline. The rules are on the governor's desk awaiting his acknowledgement of those, and then we'll keep moving forward. As far as the details of the sports wagering program, I'm going to have David kind of walk through some of that process, if you wouldn't mind.
Please. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, can we just touch on how we went, because I thought you were doing a regular rulemaking process and now it's an emergency rule making. Can you just tell us what happened so that we're all up to speed?
Co-chairman Ellis, yes. We have two processes going. We have the regular set that is also going I believe it's left LSO's office at this point, now in the governor's office. And then we also, at our last commission meeting, had voted to move it with the emergency process, the same set of rules.
And what's the difference? Why the emergency process then?
We felt, excuse me, Chairman Flipner, we just wanted to make sure that we met the September 1 deadline. We've always held that back kind of as an option. We could go ahead and do emergency rules. I think everyone is comfortable with the rules. I think they feel like they're comprehensive and they're covering all of our bases. So I believe that this is a good process of moving this forward and getting it done as soon as possible and making that September 1 deadline.
Okay. Committee, questions on the rule making or rules thus far? Okay. Well, then let's take a deep dive into online sports wagering.
All right. To get started, we have 2 operators that have applied, and to go with that, we have approximately 15 vendors for every operator. The total right now is 27 vendors, and then there's some crossover between the 2 operators, such as the geolocation service and a few of the payment processors, et cetera. I've also been diving into the sports betting catalog quite a bit, and we've kind of been working with Colorado's and Michigan's and getting with GLI on this thing as well, and
GLI.
Gaming Laboratories, sorry. And I believe we're going to launch with approximately 59 sports and approximately 285 leagues. And so we're going to be pretty robust in terms of what's going to be available to the public.
What was the second?
285 different leagues.
Leads?
Leagues,
Leagues. Thank you.
different soccer leagues, et cetera.
Okay,
It's
thank you. I'm
there's
old
a
and I
lot.
don't hear very well.
I've basically taken time to do some due diligence on just about every single one at this point, and really dive in to the point where I threw out British Darts Organization recently because they're in the process of going defunct, and had some of my operators question why. And
You could always bet on when they go defunct.
yeah, it's about to happen.
I'm sure
so.
somebody is.
That's technically not a sport, so it doesn't really fall within the statutes at this
Okay,
time.
all right, thank you.
I'm available for any questions.
Oh, gosh, that was short. Okay, Senator Landon.
Madam Chairman, I've got a question. This is probably kindergarten level, but all of a sudden on our television sets, DraftKings is just dripping all over every faucet. I mean, just every other commercial is DraftKings. Is that because we legalized online gaming?
Yes, I would say so. They've always taken a very aggressive approach, even with their daily fantasy sports 10 years ago. That's kind of been their MO, is just to really saturate the markets in terms of advertising. The one upside to that, I'm sure everyone's sick of it, including myself, but the one upside is we are bringing some advertising revenue into the state, which is, outside of that, there's not a lot of opportunity at this time for revenue inside the state, outside of the tax itself. So as annoying as it may be, I view it as a positive.
Is
Thank
it
you
like
for
those
that.
cigarette commercials? You just get the itch to start
Yeah,
betting?
there you go. So,
Vice Chairman Schuler. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a question on the number of sports. I assume most of the major, like the NFL, NBA, those sorts of things, but I kind of wondered about soccer teams, like the big Premier League from England. Could those be incorporated into this also? And how does that work if they're out of the country?
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes, they are. Basically, with soccer, especially, everything is governed by FIFA, which is the International Football Federation. I forget the exact terminology there, but there's about, I want to say 290 different organizations that are governed under FIFA. And FIFA is, a worldwide body. They're heavily scrutinized. They have had some issues in the past in terms of integrity. But generally speaking, I've been looking at every league, and a lot of the 285 actually encompass either FIFA or FIBA, which is the global basketball. So basically all of my soccer leagues are governed by FIFA. And then I added in World Cup, which is technically a FIFA thing as well. And international friendlies, smaller international cups that are still governed in one way or another through those leagues.
Oh, yes. Chairman, Vice Chairman Newsom.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder about electronic sports, digital sport playing. Is that included or is that not able to be wagered on?
Mr. Carpenter.
Representative Newsom, based on how I interpret the statute, I've left it off of my catalog at this particular moment because we're given the authority to come back in upon an operator's request and take a look at other things as they come. And so for right now, and I haven't actually spoken to Director Newsom about this or Director Moore about this, but I've left it off at this particular juncture. And also drone flying and a few of the others that they really started to explode during the coronavirus situation. And cornhole, I could actually make the case that it is a valid sport. I do have it in my catalog currently.
Says the cornhole player, I bet you.
Yeah.
right? Did you have another question, Senator Landon? Yes.
Madam Chairman, yes, I do have a question, but a comment first. I've got these relatives up in North Dakota. They're actually my bride's relatives, and I got up there and found out that our visitor today is absolutely right. Cornhole is a bigger thing than I thought it was. And I mean, they have specially weighted bags. They've got slick surfaces and not so slick surfaces and all sorts of things. And those guys travel 3-state region to play in these things. So, and then they have a national championship in Las Vegas.
Really?
I didn't know that. So maybe you didn't either. Anyway,
Mhm.
are there any, my question is, are there any prohibitions that we are putting in online gaming at this point? In other words, can our people not bet on the Wyoming Cowboys, for example? Or
Based on the statute, our patrons are allowed to bet on the University of Wyoming. And I think that's, as far as I'm concerned, and I might be in total agreement with everyone here, but I think that's going to be a big market. We're very Wyoming cowboy oriented around here. And I think there's going to be a lot of interest in that. And I hope that it'll help kind of build up our market base. We're a small population. And so I think it's crucial to have that be a part of it. And there is absolutely nothing in the statute that I have seen that would tell us otherwise.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yes, Director Moore.
Thank you, Chairman Footner. To dive into some of the geolocation services that we're utilizing currently, it's really interesting technology. Currently, today, the Gaming Laboratories Inc. has done, this will be their second time throughout the state verifying the borders. They've already verified our exterior borders of the state. They will be back in here tomorrow. Is that right? Today, tomorrow, doing the reservation lands and verifying that a second time. We will be able to, and if anybody is interested in this, please give us a call. We will be able to watch a wager as it's being transacted real time in the office. We have access to the back end of GeoComply, which is the company that offers this, and we can provide you a lot of information on that geolocation systems. And with that system, which is interesting, is while GeoComply has no idea who that individual is, it does have a reference number. Then we can reference that back and find out if we see an account, for instance, that might have an address of Casper, Wyoming, that all of a sudden we see in a 24-hour period, that account showed up in Florida or back and forth. Then we can start diving into that account and find out exactly who that individual is. It's, for all practical purposes, the technology is unbelievable. They're saying a 99 point success rate. And they are also maybe a downside, but they're very experienced. They're active in all of North America, in all states currently. And that certification will be completed hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow in our state.
Director Moore, are there any problems with hackers getting involved with this?
Chairman Flitner, that's a really good question. And there's always issues with that when you're dealing with any kind of electronics. But it's probably more important people getting someone's account and utilizing that account. So that's where the Know Your Customer product comes into play. And, they're verifying within seconds. And also, when we've done our demos and we've had, hours and hours of demos with them on the electronic side of it, they're always erring on the side of caution. If it's questionable, we have a standardized, state standardized response that goes out to the clients. And when they get a denial, and then they're asked, hey, go to this place, go to this situation, verify who you are before you can place that wager. With sports wagering, and it's also very similar to the advanced deposit wagering that we utilize in horse racing. You really know your customer almost better in these situations than you do when you're just somebody handing you the dollar, because these people have to register, they have accounts. And so we do have a really good grip on who those people are, and hopefully reduce the risk to hackers, to fraud. We were able to be on a call last week with a former Secret Service agent that was walking us through some of the experiences they've had in Tennessee. And it was really, and he worked for the Tennessee Sports Wagering Authority at that time. And just some really good information. We're continuing with training with that. Mr. Laramendi and our other special agents are taking that training and going through that. So we're hopefully, at a high level of taking care of our Wyoming citizens.
Right. And I would assume your operators and vendors also have those layers of protection built in as well.
Chairman Flitner, absolutely they do. Currently, it's been a really good experience working with the majors so far. They're constantly, we have a conference call with one of them almost every day, multiple times, and just keeping everybody up to speed, where they're at on their process, where we're at on our process, our due diligence. Mr. Laramendi has been busy doing background checks on all of these entities. But at the end of the day, you did a wonderful job with the legislation, placing in there, to be authorized in 3 jurisdictions. That's been helpful. And also with the legislation, we're mirroring other states that are successful. So, and we found that working with the Colorado Department of Revenue, working with the South Dakota Department of Revenue with theirs, we're all been discussing and talking and working together collectively on how this moves forward. So.
Very good. Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to Senator Landon's question about the commercials that have been on TV, fortunately, I don't watch a lot of TV, so I haven't seen the commercials, but the rule that you have in place, or the proposed rule, or no, I guess it's, if it's emergency and you promulgated and they're the same, it says the commission shall prohibit sports wagering advertising that it determines to be deceptive to the public.
Mhm.
It should also require that every form of advertising contain a statement that minors are not allowed to open or have access to sports accounts,
Mhm.
as well as info about programs to prevent, treat, or monitor compulsive or problem gambling. Do the current advertising or the commercials that people are seeing follow those requirements? Are we going to see a new commercial? Or are they following that right now?
Chairman Flitner, Co-Chairman Ellis, great question. Yes, they are. Currently, they're, and this question came to us about 60 days ago. They said, hey, can we at this point start advertising in the state of Wyoming? I asked that question to the Attorney General's office. The response was we had no authority to deny them at this time, as long as it was responsible and appropriate. So once the rules are signed, they do have no one under 21. They do have the problem gambling phone number that's on there. We will be going back and monitoring all of those, and they're furnishing that information to us even currently before the rules are even in effect.
One more question, Madam Chair. One more question, Director Moore. Thank you, Madam Chair. I had listened to some of the rule promulgation conversations, and one area, as a former regulator of Indian gaming, we were prohibited from putting any dollar, not one penny, in any machine of any entity we regulated. And that's, I think, a pretty standard industry practice. And I know that issue came up in the context of sports betting. And I was a little surprised to learn that there's no prohibition currently on commission staff or commissioners to either use skill-based amusement games or historic horse racing machines or anything. But it came up in the discussion of sports betting. And so I just wanted to know, did the commission adopt that industry standard that says if you're on the commission, you can't place a wager? I'm just looking through the rules, and I don't know if I'm missing something. I don't know where you guys landed on that issue.
Chairman Flitner, Co-Chairman Ellis, we ended up, we reviewed the statutes that had been rewritten, putting some more criteria into commission doing it. And the commission determined at that time to not put that into the rules. So it's not in rules. I agree with you 100%. I think that is, a lot of jurisdictions, the majority of the jurisdictions do have that prohibition in place. So.
Can you or President Davis speak to the commission's thoughts on that, why they didn't put that prohibition in place?
I got one here. I believe Representative
Yes.
Chairman Flipner,
Yes, sir.
that it was covered already in Wyoming statutes. If my memory serves me correctly, Charlie, isn't that right? I can go and see if I've got the book back here with that
Okay.
reference in there. Do you have it?
We can have our staff also see if they can find that on the fly, perhaps, right?
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
but as our director looks, I think the language pertains to conflicts of interest, which isn't the same as a prohibition on wagering. A conflict is if you're voting on a matter, an event that you have a stake in, that's different than a blanket prohibition on being able to place a wager or play a game that you regulate. So I think those two issues are distinct. And if I'm wrong, please correct me, Director.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. And thank you for that. But I do agree. We discussed it. The commission voted on it and chose to go the direction they went with that. After discussing it quite extensively that day, I believe, Bob. And I don't have the language in front of me right at this time.
Okay,
And maybe I also
See
can.
if I
Alex, on
can
that.
find it right here.
we'll give you a moment.
Madam Chairman, I believe they're speaking to 1125, 104, C and D.
Okay. Senator Landon.
Thank you. If Mr. Brody has it up, I wonder, could you go into a little more detail on that, Mr. Brody? I don't have it up yet, so I was just curious, what does that pertain to? Is that a more general statute over the top of the Gaming Commission in general, or what?
Mr. Brody, if you wouldn't mind.
Sorry, we had microphone tried to abandon me. So 1125, 104C states any member of the commission who has a personal or private interest in any matter proposed or pending before the commission shall publicly disclose this fact. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, and shall not vote on the matter. And then subsection D, which is effective September 1st. Any member of the commission who owns or has any interest, or whose spouse or member of his immediate family has any interest in any activity regulated by the commission, or in an animal participating in a pari-mutuel event, shall disclose that interest and shall not participate in any commission decision involving a protest regarding that activity or occurring at that pari-mutuel event. So it seems to be bifurcated in between activities regulated by the commission and then more specific language with respect to pari-mutuel wagering.
Right. Yes, sir.
Just a quick follow-up for consideration here. It seems to me that under that statute, that a member of our commission, should he or she decide to bet on the Wyoming Cowboys, for example, could disclose that and simply not vote at the next gaming commission topic underneath online wagering, for example. Am I reading that wrong? Fellow committee members, we at
Mr.
least
Brody,
have that that in place.
clarification on conflict of interest, I guess.
I mean, I think that's a fairly good summation. If a commission member or a family member of a commissioner has an interest in any activity regulated by the gaming commission, then I believe the statute could be interpreted to require that be disclosed to the public.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the thing I'm concerned about, stepping back from just the online sports wagering, is, recently, within the last year, somebody had placed a wager on a historic horse racing machine and won nearly $500,000. I think my concern is there's never like an event that you have to disclose an interest in. If you're a commissioner, there's nothing that prevents you from putting $1 in that machine and then potentially winning back $500,000. And I think the concern is, in most other jurisdictions, that would just reek of impropriety. Like, isn't that convenient? So that's why I think most jurisdictions have a wholesale ban on preventing play. And when we looked at this language, I don't think that this came up when the skill-based games really came online. And so in my view, this language is really kind of tailored to those pari-mutuel events when they were, finite number and very discrete. So I don't know that we've quite tackled that issue as a legislature, and it sounds like it's one that the commission hasn't grappled with in its rulemaking.
Right.
Madam Chair.
Yes, President Davis.
Would that also apply to the Wyoming lottery? If you buy
A lottery ticket, right?
to a Powerball, et cetera, where, I mean, that there's some gray area that I think I don't know.
Okay, Chairman Ellis.
Madam Chairman, there's the Gaming Commission has no jurisdiction of the lottery. So it's not an entity you regulate. So you could play the Powerball through the lottery, but because it's not an activity regulated by the commission.
Food for thought. Committee, further questions on online sports wagering? Okay, let's move on to Gaming Commission membership composition.
Chairman Flitner, I provided you with our composition. And, if you'd like me to, would you like me to go down through the current commissioners we have and just give you a little brief background on them?
Please.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. President Davis obviously is here. He's a business owner. He's in the hospitality and agriculture business. You could expand on that if you'd like to.
Yes, and we do own a restaurant, bar, and hotel. And we are active in breeding stock in Wyoming, which is in the horse racing business. And I do have a racehorse also.
Thank you. And back in, Vice President Broussard manages the Double E Ranch, which is in Cody, Wyoming. He's a former ranger. So thank you for that. And business major, very well-rounded individual that's there. Commissioner Daigle, retired from the Teton County Clerk's office. She was going to be here today, but she was unable to from a previous commitment. Commissioner Leinen, he's retired from Cheyenne Light and Power Company as an executive there. He's been on the commission several years. I think this is his last year. Over several years, when we were the parimutuel commission, we always had a veterinarian on the commission. Felt like since we're in the ag business, that was important. We have Dr. Tom Berry, which is veterinarian in Buffalo, Wyoming. Then we have with us here today, Dick Cura, and Dick could expand on, he's retired law enforcement, realtor. Lots
Jack of all
things.
trades, master of none.
There you go.
Thank you. Yes, I spent over 32 years in law enforcement here in the state of Wyoming, 8 with the Wyoming Highway Patrol as a trooper, another 8 plus with the Fremont County Sheriff's Department as a captain under the existing sheriff. And then the last 14 years with the city of Lander as their chief of police. And after I retired from there in 2005, I went into real estate for a change of pace, I guess, and enjoyed that for another 14 years. So I just like working with people, and these committees and these commissions are a new venue for me, which I enjoy tremendously, meeting all the friends and meeting with representatives of our state of Wyoming and senators. I just appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Continued service.
Chairman Flitner, continuing on, Paul Cavello Jr. He's president of Points West Community Bank in Torrington, Wyoming, excuse me. Thank you. Then we have Commissioner Pacheco. He is with the Rock Springs Police Department. He is currently the president of the Wyoming Sheriffs and Chiefs Association. Then we have Jenny Wildcat. She's with the tribal gaming side, and she is a regular for over 15 years, I believe it is, with that, and that rounds out our commission.
And Director Moore, I didn't pull up the statute, but what is Wyoming's criteria for membership? I know it's noted on all these other states, but if Wyoming was on here, I missed it. But specifically, if they had to have.
I've got it here.
Okay.
If I can find it. I had it laid out this morning. Watch me, I can't find it now with all my junk.
I know how that goes. Yes, Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. While the director is looking, I just wanted to comment that Sherry Daigle was invaluable when I was chairman of our Corporations and Elections Committee. And I'm surprised that Teton County allowed her to retire. But I'm pleased for all of you at the table that she's a member of our commission. So she's terrific.
Fantastic. Do you have it?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Thank you. Chairman Flitner, thank you. 1125-103, would you like me to read it?
Sure.
Okay. The governor, with the consent of the Senate, shall appoint the 9 members of the commission in accordance with Wyoming statutes 2812-101 through 2812-103. 7 of the 9 members shall be appointed from each appointment district under Wyoming statutes 9-1-218. 1 of the remaining members shall be at the time of appointment and during the term of appointment an active county or municipal law enforcement officer certified under Title IX, Chapter 1, Article 7 of the Wyoming statutes. 1 of the remaining members shall be an enrolled member of the Northern Arapaho or Eastern Shoshone tribe with not less than 5 years of regulatory gaming experience. Members shall be appointed for 4 terms and shall succeed themselves for another. Any vacancies shall be filled by appointment by the governor as provided in Wyoming statutes 2812-101, a 4-member for another 4-year term. The governor may remove any members provided in Wyoming statutes 9-1. Additionally, 1 senator will be appointed by the president of the Senate, 1 representative appointed by the Speaker of the House, and 1 gubernatorial representative shall serve as liaison to the commission. Liaison shall be paid the salary per diem and mileage provided by 285101.
Very good. Thank you. Committee questions regarding composition for Director Moore? I don't see anybody online. Okay.
Madam Chairman,
Representative Sweeney, I can't
So-
see you.
currently, who are the liaisons?
Chairman
Moore.
Flitner, Representative Sweeney, we have Representative Newsom here, and then we have Senator Driscoll. And the governor's liaison is Dan Schiffer.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I noticed as I went through the other states and how they structure their commissions, that a lot of them have attorneys and a lot of them have CPAs called out. Do you think that would be helpful as you go through this monumental transition in your duties?
Director Moore.
Chairman Flitner, Representative Newsom, any good business background, I think is important to a commission in the makeup. Whether it's an attorney, we've had attorneys on the board in the past, and it's always helpful. So, one of the problems you get into here in Wyoming is what makes us so unique. It's a small state, and so it is hard. The governor's office, I know from working with several governors, works very hard trying to come up with commission folks that'll do this for us in all boards and commissions. So you always worry, while the answer to your question is yes, you always worry if you tighten that down tighter, you may all of a sudden be in a position to where, okay, where do we go? Where do we find this individual?
Right. I was thinking that myself. That's Wyoming's difficult task, it's just that we don't have the population density to dive that deep and be that prescriptive with, make sure that it's an economics person or a finance person or what have you. But right, that's a good question. Further questions, committee? Okay, yes, Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kind of back to the structure of it. I think I can't find it right now, but the state to our south, or in my immediate south, I think they have it divided out where there's still a parimutuel commission, and then the other gaming activities are separated out, if my recollection. I'm just kind of curious, do you miss just being a straight parimutuel, like dealing with horses commission? I'm just curious.
Director Moore.
Chairman Flitner, Senator Ellis, this has been an interesting ride. I think I know the answer is no. We've seen a lot of really good successes here, whether it's with the horse racing side, in 2015 with the expansion with the historic racing, we saw that. And then now with the skill games, and then now with sports wagering. It is a lift. I think there may be some advantages to being split Colorado, and I speak with the directors there routinely, and it is simplified that way. A lot of times for them, they focus on one individual group. But we are slowly dividing the commission out, not necessarily commission members, but we're segregating, the horse racing, the skill games. David with the sports wagering, and David also is going to be tackling the skill games as well and trying to segregate some of this out. So the answer is I don't really want to go back to that. I think that we have a good model right now. We just got to keep building on it.
Yes, Senator Landon.
I did have one question, and have been waiting, Madam Chairman, for the right moment. Not sure if we've covered everything, but I took the time to go down and meet for an hour or two with the chairman after our previous meeting, just because quite honestly, there's a lot I don't know about what they're up to. And I came away with this question. Do we have enough people in your operation to do what we're asking you to do? Especially with this online component, which followed closely on the heels with all the skill games efforts that we have undergone. Do we have enough folks to get this job done properly to help you?
Director Moore, to put you on the spot.
No, Chairman Flitner, Senator Landon, that question is probably the easiest question that you've asked. No, absolutely not. It's We have 3 AWAC positions that we've already opened up, went through the B11 process for those. An administrative, the sports wagering coordinator position, and an investigator position. The investigator is former law enforcement, retired from the Natrona County Sheriff's Office. I have now another B11 that will be going forward with 3 additional people. A lower level CFO position, because we're dealing with so much. We want to segregate that out to where we have enough checks and balances. And in following general accounting practices, we work with A&I and deal with that and have good checks and balances, but we need to expand upon that. So I would be looking at 3 additional positions just to handle that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So to follow up, Director, first question is, why are those 3 positions AWAC at this point? And what is going to be your budgetary ask? Are you going to include some positions in your ask? And I ask that question because this is the committee that, should it be so inclined, could throw some support behind that effort. Where are you at with your budget?
Thank you, Chairman Flitner, Senator Landon. Our budgets are due the 31st of this month. I will be a day or 2 after that, probably. We will be asking for the current AWAC positions to be full-time. And the reason they're AWAC right now is because we're in the middle, we're between bienniums and getting that done through JAC. The additional 3 positions, I will be asking for those to be full-time as well. So we'll be asking for 6, and I know that's a lift. That's pushing a rope uphill on JAC. So I do need the help. We have the justification. We have the revenues coming in. And at the end of the day, the 2 pieces that are important to keep focused on is you need these folks to maximize the asset, which is the money that's going to the state of Wyoming, and to the cities and counties and the cities and every other piece, or the horse racing side of it, but also protect the interests, protect the wagering public, protect that integrity. And as we, with sports wagering right now, we don't know the size of it. So it's a little bit of an unknown. We can look to the state to the south, but their population is quite a bit larger, as you know. South Dakota is opening up with brick and mortar sports wagering with a very small crew, but it's isolated to Deadwood. It's in Deadwood where they already have an existence there. So, again, we don't know what this is going to look like. And I would imagine, and I fully expect, that shortly after, in the next 60 days, we'll be coming again with a phase 3, phase 4, however you want to place it, with additional staff to accommodate all this. I know we also need additional investigators and law enforcement folks as well.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and Director, thanks. I didn't give you a clue I was going in that direction, but I've just been thinking a lot about what we're asking out of this commission, and appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with JAC. Is there anything further you'd like to tell this committee with regard to online sports wagering and the implementation process?
Do you have any follow-up?
One thing I did just want to clarify, listening to Director Moore talk to you guys earlier. Per the statute, it is 18 and over. And so those billboards and the advertisements, they need to be over 18 for those ads. And I, like you, Senator Ellis, don't watch a lot of TV, so I'm unaware on the TV side. But I have seen the billboards, and there is a thing in the bottom left corner, to my knowledge. Other than that, I don't think I have much else at this moment. I'm tired. This is my 30-day anniversary today.
Well, thank you very much.
If Chairman Flitner, if I could just follow up on the heels of one of the issues, and if you read the gaming report, is some of that inconsistency. And I know Senator Ellis, you spoke to that on the ages. You know, we've got drinking 21, we have, you know, sports wagering, 18, parimutuel 18, I think the lottery 21, I believe, is that correct? So we have some of those disparities, and I think for consistency across the board, you know, I think that would be a suggestion that I would have to you all at some point. Maybe look at that.
Okay, thank you. Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So along those lines, the issue of the decals,
Mhm.
I called the commission because I
Mhm.
was, or I emailed you, Charlie. So
Yeah.
thank you for responding to it. But I found stickers that were out of date.
Mhm.
And so emailed you. And then I've been getting lots of emails from people that live in my district who look at historic horse racing machines that don't have up-to-date stickers or no stickers.
Mhm.
And so I would love to know if there's a commission-wide effort to really get a handle on where those machines are and current decals. And if they don't have a current decal, they got to turn them off and take them out of a public space. Can you talk about what's going on with keeping track of these machines?
Director Moore.
Absolutely. What I am going to do, if you don't mind, is turn it over to Special Agent Laramendi, and he is in the middle of this and can explain it to you very
Okay.
clearly.
Mr. Laramendi, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Co-Chair. So there's a little bit of a difference between the decals on the skill games versus the decals on the historic horse racing terminals. The ones on the historic horse racing terminals are stamps for the year that they're issued, and the ones for, and those are non-expiring stickers. So, you know, when we go into the OTB locations for inspections, we go through those, go through the rows, and we'll look for the decals to make sure that they are in place. If we find them that they're not, we'll issue new decals for those as well to keep those up to date. On the skill game side, to date, we have issued all new decals for all of the approved terminals. And I've been working with vendors to ensure that those are in place, as it's, you know, it really falls on the vendors to ensure that those stickers are in place. One of the things that maybe I could work on as well, because I know the question had come up about how we monitor compliance and how we handle those. So it's kind of, with the skill games currently, it's, you know, it's the totality of the circumstances. We have to approach these are criminal cases until the rules are finalized and in place, and the rules have some sort of administrative sanctions. These are criminal cases. A lot of times we find that, you know, working with the vendors and the operators for small things like a missing sticker or something like that, we can talk to them, you know, point it out to them, and they're very quick to address the concern and fix it. Sometimes it may need more than, I guess I would classify that as kind of like a verbal warning. Sometimes it needs more than that, and we'll issue formal letters of violation to the operators, you know, outlining the circumstances of the violation and saying, you know, this is what the statute says, this is what you're in violation of, you need to fix this, or you could risk, you know, a criminal citation for that. Likewise, some of these we have to go even further with. And like I said, they're criminal cases. So we open case files, we do interviews, we gather evidence, we get the facts, and then those cases go to local prosecuting attorneys. And the prosecuting attorneys review the case and look at the evidence and issue charges for those. I hope that answers your question.
Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess the image I sent you was more or less a receipt that said, you know, Wyoming Gaming Commission. It had an expiration date on it. And it was just taped sideways on the machine. I thought when we used the word decal, it was, in my view, something a little bit more permanently affixed to a machine that's really sticky, that no one could really take off without really having to scrape off, not unlike your annual vehicle registration. And so I'm wondering if there's a movement to make those decals a little bit less susceptible to being tampered with, especially if they're not conspicuous in conspicuous areas that are continually monitored. And then along those lines, I've reviewed the statute and the legislation that authorized historic horse racing machines, and the commission was given broad latitude to write those rules. So there's nothing that prevents the commission from kind of growing these two machines that are very, very similar and treating them, giving them a little bit more parity and treatment. Right now, the historic horse racing machines say that you may ask for a lab report, but doesn't require it every year like the skilled machine or the annual look, or if you change the software, hardware on the machine, then you have to get a new lab report for the skill. But there's not that same requirement in statute for the historic horse racing machines, but could be through rule. And so I'm just wondering if your agency is trying to look at both of those and provide a little bit more of that parity as you're looking at all your rulemaking responsibilities.
Mr. Larramendi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair. Going back to the stickers. So last year when the session law was passed, we had a very short time. So those stickers were kind of created on a fly. And I think Director Moore may be handing out photographs of our new stickers that we have. Those look just like the Department of Ag stickers for gas pumps. And they also coincide with the ones that are on the historic horse racing terminals. So they're the same size. They have a little bit different look because the statute for the skill-based amusement say that they have to have the Wyoming biking horse logo. So that's included into those stickers as well. With the historic horse racing terminals, keep in mind that those, when they push software updates to those, whether it's a math model update that goes through commission approval, those machines are tested on a weekly basis by an independent laboratory. I could tell you, let me pull it up here real quick on my computer. And within the last 30 days, I've received 76 verifications from Gaming Laboratories International between the historic horse racing operators. Those machines are constantly being tested by the laboratory to ensure that the signatures match what has been approved.
Follow up? Okay, and Director Moore, is this the historic horse racing decal or is this? Okay, all right, we'll just share this with the committee as well.
And I thought I had a photograph with me of the stickers that you had provided us, so you could see the comparison, and I don't have it with me. I apologize for that.
That's all right. Thank you. Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So, first off, I appreciate anybody in the line of fire that puts themselves, puts an application in for any board, any commission, and in particular, the Gaming Commission, with all the trials and tribulations in this growth pattern, which has been unprecedented as far as I'm concerned. First off, setting up a gaming commission was first piece of legislation. Then comes along skilled games. Then comes along sports wagering. And I think you've been pretty darn efficient with minimal staff and trying to regulate it all. So I think these are all good conversations and growth, but in particular to the board members present and online, thank you. And I hope you can continue to serve and we don't run you off. So, because I know you're making huge wages when you're, and today my guess is a volunteer day. So, but.
And I echo that too. My husband was appointed by Governor Friedenthal to the Environmental Quality Council at the height of the coal bed methane boom. So it was not unlike what you all are experiencing. It was, you better dive in because you were thrown in the deep end right away. So thank you guys for your volunteerism and your stepping up to serve Wyoming in that respect.
Representative Flipner, I also have 35 years in the oil and gas industry. as a business owner and operator.
Okay,
too.
right.
So,
And I see we have Mr. Laramendi, did you have a follow-up? And then Senator Grew has raised his hand as well.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that I didn't address, Senator Ellis, was you had asked how we're tracking the terminal placements and everything else. On the skill game side, I have a running spreadsheet identified by serial number of each location that they're at. So I know which 4 terminals are supposed to be in every location. And that's important. So when we do compliance checks, our guys go in with the spreadsheet on a tablet that says, at bar A, you should have terminals 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we match and verify the serial numbers to that spreadsheet to ensure that machines aren't being moved inappropriately. We also are verifying the software IDs that it's operating on an approved software version. Likewise, with the historic horse racing, every day we get, they're called tote reports from the tote providers, and those tote reports show every terminal that's on the floor at each location, and they're all identified similarly with a terminal ID number, and we can track those. So at any given time, we know exactly where the terminals are at, which ones are operated on the floor, which ones are maybe down for maintenance or a broken part. I just wanted to make sure that I addressed that with you.
Okay, Chairman Ellis.
Follow up, Madam Chair. So one question is it too much of a burden to put the serial number on the decal?
Well, yes and no. With the ones that we've just gone to that are like the Department of Ag ones, we would have to have, roughly 900 different stickers printed with an individual serial number. And the problem that we have now moving forward with sometimes with a machine malfunction or a breakdown, and they have to put a new component in, it can change those numbers. So then we have to change the stickers as well.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Sure.
I think that's the point, right? If a machine malfunctions and it's swapped out for something else, you have to get the new sticker. Then there's the verification that that machine is what you say it is, not just taking off but I think that's the whole point, is to track it better.
Yeah,
Sure.
Mr. Laramendi. Right. Wouldn't you
Madam Chair,
agree?
thank you. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that we can look into. And if we can figure out a way to get a semi-permanent sticker that we can issue to a set serial number, I think that's a great idea. And I know, last year in the interim during the sunsetting legislation, that we did that. We put the serial numbers on those stickers. So then we could go back and we could verify the sticker serial number matched the terminal serial number, which in turn matched our spreadsheet that it was in the right location. And all the checks and balances crosses.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question's for Mr. Laramendi. Seems to be a lot of switching. We talk about a skill game machine, then we talk about a historic horse racing machine, and all of a sudden we're interchanging the two. They're two separate machines doing two separate functions, and we get lots and lots of letters, anecdotal, over the transom, under the door types of stuff about what's going on here. And so I guess for me, I'm having a little trouble just tracking it all. But the important thing that I like to keep in mind is it's not so much important that I need to track it. It's important that you need to be tracking it. So you said something, and I want to kind of hone in on it. I heard you testify earlier that you and your people are checking these machines on a regular basis. Now, my question is, skill-based games, how often are you checking them? All of them. I mean, if they're and we know how many skill-based machines there are in the state of Wyoming operating today. How often do folks in your investigations unit check those machines? And just give me a ballpark on that.
Mr. Laramendi, are you the
Thank-
person in your department? The lone
Certainly,
person?
I can answer that question. Thank you. So since the inception of skill games, the investigation team, which up until about 3 months ago comprised of 2 people, we have completed 600 location inspections of skill games. We have made it into every location at least twice throughout the state.
If I can follow up, and what was the time frame there?
Since I would say in the last roughly 12 months.
12
Okay,
months,
six-
Senator Group.
Okay, so if I heard that right, 600 units, they were all been checked twice in the last 12 months. Did I get that right?
That's
Mr.
correct.
Laramendi? Mhm. Yes.
Okay, if I can follow up again, Madam Chair. Okay, let's go to the horse racing machines. How many total? How often have they been checked in that same 12-month time frame? Or, and if you can't answer it, there's someone else who's better to answer it. Phone a friend or ask them or whatever.
Mr. Laramendi?
Madam Chair, thank you. In the same period of time, the historic horse racing terminals, we've checked 87 times in their locations.
Did you, hear, Senator, 87 times?
87 times. How many machines?
Mr. Laramendi?
Give me 1 second and I can give you the exact number of machines. So the historic ones we do those based on locations. So we checked those 25 locations a total of 87 times. So like each location has been roughly checked 3 times over the same amount of time.
So, Mr. Laramendi, would there be since Wyoming is a big state and you have a lot of ground to cover and there are just 2 of you, would there be a better way for you to check those stickers and make sure these machines are compliant?
Madam Chair, that's a tough question. I mean, I think the best way for us to ensure that everything is operating the way that it's supposed to be is by physically going into these locations. And it's a lot of windshield time. I think so far this year, we've logged about 36,000 miles just since the beginning of January.
Mr. Laramendi, what about extending, asking of our local law enforcement if they might be able to help with that?
Madam Chair, we've worked closely with several law enforcement agencies. I talked to compliance people with Cheyenne PD who do some of their underage drinking, tobacco sales, those kind of things, to keep an eye out and let us know if they see issues. They've also been sent a list of what games are approved in what locations for their counties. So those have all been broken out by county and sent through the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs to every sheriff's office and local police department.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, President Davis.
how often are you guys wanting these checked? I mean, that seems to be the question here. You know, the difference between the games of skill is there's 4 games per site. Within the horse racing on the historical racing side, there's maybe 100 games in those.
Locations.
So, I mean, it's not apples to apples, but how often is the requirement? Is
Okay.
there a requirement set out by statute or that we're not aware of? I guess that's the question on what are we hunting here?
Okay, Senator Guru, would you like to answer that?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I would. That's precisely, that's kind of what I was trying to get at, Mr. Chairman, to your question, Madam Chairman, to Mr. Chairman. Is it, what is enough? I think what I heard was that it's a pretty rigorous process that they're going through and checking the machines quite often. It's not as much of a laissez-faire type of deal as I thought. It seemed like given the manpower you've got, you're checking them quite often. That's comforting to know, because I think what the point is that the gaming public has the right to know that that there is some sort of process that these machines are going through. I also know that you were growing in a lot of different areas that we all have thrown at you in a very short amount of time. So I wasn't looking to I was trying to, well, I got the information I was looking for, was that these do go through a rigorous change. Are there things we could be doing better with the stickers and putting them on the machines so they can stay? I mean, I go to a local gas station and I see those stickers on there that say from the state of Wyoming. It says that it's pumping the amount of gas that it's supposed to pump. Then I also go home and read on the news that every time I stick my credit card in there, I'm pretty much, spinning the chamber of a gun and sticking it to my head, because someone's going to be stealing that information out from under me, and there's no way to check for that. So what's my biggest concern? That my credit card's going to get stolen, or that I'm going to get a half a gallon less of gas than I thought I was going to? The point is that I think we can only do as much as we can do with the manpower we have, and then try to make it better as we go. And it sounds like to me like you're doing that. And I too, along with the senator from Natrona County, I took the time and made a call and spent some time with Director Moore and his team. And I too agree that while challenges are there and we have some work to do, I think they're doing exemplary work. And I think that while they need some help, I think they're trying their best to stay on top of it and give us that integrity, give us that level of confidence that if you are a person that plays these games, I'm not, but if you are, that you've got that confidence when you walk in the door. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Salazar, then Vice Chairman Schuler, and then Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I just want to make a comment too. We have plenty of our fellow citizens in Wyoming who don't support gambling. And I think it's important, and by the way, I think you are doing a good job, okay? I think you are. But one of the reasons that we need to be on top of this is for those folks too, as well. Because at the end of the day, it's taxpayers' money. They don't gamble. They perceive that with gambling comes certain connotations. And so that confidence needs to stay at a very high level, especially for those who don't support this. So I think that's another reason, and I appreciate the senator's comments. And from what I've seen, though, I feel good. I feel good. I think when it comes time for you to submit your budget, though, those additional personnel probably are going to be needed to keep that confidence, because as we expand, there's always elements that will come into our state, and we need to be aware of that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question is also on compliance, kind of a follow-up. I think you guys have done an amazing job with the staff that you have. But what I really like is the fact that you have kind of a tier system to address issues. And just mention that you contact the vendors if there's a problem via email or phone. And then you send out a formal letter if that doesn't work. And then eventually you end up citing them. I like the fact that you're giving them the opportunity to get into compliance. But my question was towards the bottom of your answers there. You'd mentioned that you have had a couple of criminal cases that have been filed. Has it been very many? And then not only that, what has been the follow-up with our county attorneys?
Mr. Laramendi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Senator Schuler. So currently we have 10 open criminal investigations across the grommet. That doesn't just include skill games. The Gaming Commission oversees and investigates anything for the gambling statute. So that could be illegal bingo operations, illegal pull tab sales, raffles being conducted illegally, or just straight gambling. We do have some current criminal cases that are in the court system. I can't really go into detail with those since they're still pending, but we do have some upcoming trials. So far, the prosecutors that we've worked with have been great to work with. We've been able to sit down and go over some of the new changes in the laws and everything else, and they assisted us greatly.
Okay, thank you. And Representative Sweeney, and then I just remind the committee of our time. Thank you. Representative Sweeney. No? Okay. Oh, Chairman Ellis.
Madam Chair, last year you provided a commission report on gaming, which I thought was really helpful. I read it a few times. I think it'd be helpful to have that annually, just so we can every year kind of see the number of games, if they're down or up, or particular on the horse racing side, because that fluctuates, unlike the skills, which we've locked in, right? If you hadn't applied by May of 2020, you're kind of out of luck. But one of the things the report recommends is that all skill-based amusement games should be required to process and report wagering activity through a central server communication system. It seems like there might be an efficiency, but not just requiring that of just the skill games, but also the historic horse racing machines. That way, there's a little machine in there that keeps track of it. And so if you do have a machine that's out of date and out of compliance, you could go back and say, on this date, their decal wasn't valid. We've got the report, and it's this much wagering activity has occurred in that time when that machine should have been off, like a mechanism to recover that. So I'm just wondering, do you need, do you still think there'd be value in that? And again, I'm just thinking of that parity issue of treating these machines similarly, but that might be also a mechanism to reduce the manpower that you need and rely on technology to keep track of that somewhat for you. Do you think that's a reasonable request for both those types of machines?
Chairman Flitner, Co-Chairman Ellis, again, we are in the middle of that process. So, excuse me, with the historic racing, we're already getting those reports daily through the vendors. Those come in, we're getting daily reports on the activity, the percentage, the amount of play on every terminal. We also have a third-party auditor that we have had since day one with the historic racing that is monitoring those and sending that report to us every week and monitoring that. At some point in the near future, we will be making that same similar parity, have a third-party auditor working with the skill game world. And also that'll be part of the sports wagering world as well for us. But yeah, embracing technology is huge. I had a conversation with one of the skill game operators yesterday afternoon about that technology that's out there. I've approached ETS on several times about writing software and putting that package together for us. And I've got a meeting again next week with them. At one point, I felt like they did not have that ability to do that. So we were going to go outside and do an RFP. And now they're back thinking that they can tackle that project. So those are all very valid things. Those are things that are on the radar and that we do want to implement. You're fine.
Madam Chair, so for skill games, you said you're in the middle of that. What does that mean? You said you are doing it then, but then you said we'd like to do it. I want to really make sure I understand this. You're going to put that required that technology be included in every skill game to monitor all the wagering activity, everything that's paid in, everything that's paid out. Make sure I understand this.
Thank you. Chairman Flitner, Co-Chairman Ellis. At this point, we're not at the point where I can say that we are going to do it, because that would be a commission determination. Do we want to do this and that? But I think the operators have all expressed their interest in it as well. So we're still in the talking process with that. And then also, what is the viability of doing that and the costs that go with it? So I know I'm still out there, not committing to it, but I sure will keep you abreast.
Thank you, Director Moore. And so committee, it is 2:35. And so we're a little behind schedule, but with that, we will open up public comment, and we thank you guys for being here. So if there's anyone in the room who would like to speak to this topic, Now is your opportunity. And thank you again, everybody, for being here and addressing the committee. We appreciate it. Thanks for your service. Public comment? Going once? Going twice? Okay. Chairman Ellis, did you have a comment?
Madam Chair, I just want to say I have concerns about regulators being able to play games that they regulate. My experience, that's contrary to an industry practice. And then along those lines, I was reviewing the rules for parimutuel wagering. And there's in one of the titles it talks about alcohol and drug testing of participants, and it says no licensee or employee of any entity associated with the conduct of a parimutuel event shall have present within his system any amount of alcohol in excess of 0.05% content while on the grounds of a permitted parimutuel event. Just another industry standard. I guess these rules were written again when this was just a parimutuel commission, but it is an industry practice that if you're a regulator working in a casino, that there's a zero tolerance policy of any alcohol consumption, let alone illegal drug use. So those things are just very concerning to me, and I just wanted to make that statement while we had the commission here.
Okay, thank you. Senator Landon.
If you would be so inclined, Madam Chairman, I would like to make a motion. And we'll see how the committee feels about it. I would like to move that our chairman, plural, develop a letter on behalf of our committee to support the request for additional positions that will go in front of the Appropriations Committee. Ultimately, it will be up to our colleagues on appropriations to decide what they can and should do and whatever. But it's been made pretty clear to me that our commission agency really needs some help. We can't keep, you can only pack a horse so much weight, and there's a lot there. So I think that we could frame it any way we want, but it would be my intention that I think they deserve that support from the Appropriations Committee. So that's my motion.
Okay. Moved by Senator Landon, seconded by Representative Sweeney, that a letter be drafted on behalf of this committee supporting that the Joint Appropriations Committee would support any recommendations by the commission in terms of increased staff and funding. Did I get that right? About right? So committee comments on that? Question having been called, all those in favor, show of hands. Chairman Ellis.
Madam Chair, I just do have a question on just the detail of it. How many more, in what categories? The enforcement piece is one, auditing's another. I mean, there are different job functions I think that commissions can engage in to secure that gaming integrity. So I would like to tease that out, and maybe that just as a friendly amendment to your motion would be that we visit with the Gaming Commission to put a finer point on what that might look like.
Senator Landon.
Madam Chairman, I would trust our chairman, plural, to develop a letter supporting our commission. And Chairman Ellis is right. There's lots of detail we could get down into. We could specify which positions we want, but I think generally I would take a lead from our director of the agency. I think he outlined for us that we've got 3 AWAC positions that shouldn't be. We've got 3 more that we're going to ask for, which will directly affect our ability to regulate and to check these machines. So that alone, I think, is quite a bit of depth right there.
Mm-hmm.
I would trust our chairman to detail that in any way that you would like to.
Okay.
I just think it's important that if we feel like our commission needs the help, then it doesn't hurt us to send that letter to let the Appropriations Committee know that that's the sentiment of our committee.
Okay. And Senator Guru, did you have a comment?
No, just put the motion all the way there, Madam Chairman.
Okay. All right. So It's a question having been called. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. We have 3 noes, so motion carries. All right, thank you very much. And I don't see anybody stepping up for public comments, so thank you all very much. We'll move on to our last item of the day, which is Bozeman Trail National Historic Designation. And Mr. McKee, if he is here. Oh, there you are. Thank you, sir. Please come forward. I apologize that we're running a little behind. Okay. Okay, you want to just go ahead and have a seat, and there you go. And put that microphone close to you, and please introduce yourself.
I'll get Dave McKee, and I live in Sheridan,
And
Wyoming.
if Mr., just you can move that, you can bring it closer to you.
Okay.
There you go.
Let's do that. Dave McKee from Sheridan, Wyoming, and I'm here today. I'm the president of the Fort Phil Kearny Bozeman Trail Association. So representing our association today, which is a nonprofit, and representing a partner with us on this topic today, Our Montana, who's also a nonprofit. Just a little bit about myself. So I moved to Laramie in 1980 to specifically pursue a degree in archaeology and have a career in archaeology, and was lucky enough to do that. So 32 years as a cultural resource specialist and tribal liaison and recreation program manager for the U.S. Forest Service. So now you could say incorrectly label me as retired because I'm busier than when I was working. But I will say on a personal note that I spent my career doing volunteer excavations, public programs, school programs with a curriculum called classroom archaeology. So my personal commitments to education. And of course, when I was working federally, it was, this is the product that I can give to my employer, which is the taxpayer. So continuing that in this volunteer nonprofit status. So I'll bring up a PowerPoint.
Okay.
Are we good? Okay. So what I'm here to talk about today is our joint effort to seek listing of the Bozeman Trail as a National Historic Trail. So with the discovery of gold around Virginia City, Montana in the early 1860s, miners and other fortune seekers were looking for a way to get to the gold fields of Virginia City. Jim Bridger had established a route skirting the west slope of the Bighorns through the Bighorn Basin, but they were looking for a quicker way. So the Bozeman Trail became a shortcut, 535-mile shortcut to Virginia City from the Oregon Trail on the North Platte River. So today, on behalf of Our Montana and our Fort Phil Kearny Bozeman Trail Association, I wanted to just give you a briefing, a brief history, and then a little overview of how the National Historic Trail Act works. And then I wanted to talk about our outreach and our current results from our outreach right now. So benefits of National Trail Designation. First of all, just as historians and people interested in history, the Bozeman Trail is worthy of national designation. It underscores, it cements the historic importance of this trail, not only nationally, but to our local communities in Wyoming and Montana. It's a real key part of our history. Secondly, we think that the national designation will increase visitation and revenue at museums and sites along the corridor. For us as a nonprofit, third, we apply for grants in support of Fort Phil Kearny, and museums do the same thing as well for their sites. So we think that national designation will strengthen our grant applications so that we can better support and serve our state historic sites. With strengthened grants and more interest, we think we can enhance the education and preservation efforts at our sites. For me, as a citizen of Wyoming, another key is if we can get increased visitation, longer visitation, more interest, that's going to be a direct benefit to our local communities. That's important to me as a citizen. And finally, for us in these financial times, I think it's also important to do everything we can to keep our state historic sites relevant now and into the future. And that's both in terms of the education we share, but also in terms of trying to generate some revenue so we can keep going. Little bit of history, of course, John Bozeman was the promoter. He went to the gold fields of Virginia City and struck out, but he and a partner, John Jacobs, said they could probably do better if they promoted the trail and guided people on the Bozeman Trail. So hence the trail is named after John Bozeman. But we know that the trail was there for millennia before John Bozeman and used by the tribes. The Crow have a name for this trail, and it translates as the trail that goes south. So the trail was in existence for a long, long time, but Bozeman was a good promoter, if not a good gold panner. The problem with the shortcut, which had advantages over going to the west, there was good water, good grass, it was fewer miles, but it went right through tribal territory set aside by the Horse Creek Treaty or Laramie Treaty of 1851. A lot of dynamic changes in the Powder River and in this area at that time. So the treaty had identified this as Crow territory. The Lakota and the Cheyenne were now pushing the Crow back north and west. But the trail was going right through the prime bison hunting ground of the tribes and to their way of thinking, set aside by treaty. So there was an incursion, which ignited fights. So the trail was first established in 1863. The first use of the trail was out of Deer Creek Station in what is now Glen Rock, led by Bozeman and Jacobs. They got about as far as Rock Creek by Buffalo and ran into a contingent of Northern Cheyenne and Lakota, and they told them to turn around and go back. And most of the wagon train did. I think Bozeman and about 8 others scampered on up to Virginia City. Then in 1864, they started moving wagon trains from Rashad's Bridge area there in Casper. And that was the main launch point in 64. And then in 65 and 66, the military started out of Fort Fetterman and then hooked into the trail. So for the majority of the length, they all followed the same piece, but there's like 3 pigtails at the bottom along the North Platte River. Like I said, in 1863, the first attempt, a wagon train left Deer Creek Station in Glen Rock. Got as far as Rock Creek and turned around and scampered back. The fighting and encounters increased as more people tried to go north and the tribes resisted, which caused the U.S. military to build 3 forts. Well, refit Fort Reno, which used to be Fort Connor, then build Fort Phil Kearny and Fort C.F. Smith in the summer of 1866, and to have soldiers there to protect the travelers from their point of view. And there's Fort Phil Kearny, historic drawing of it. With the building of the forts, tribal resistance increases and a tribal alliance is created. In part, after the Sand Creek Massacre in Colorado, the Northern Cheyenne came with the pipe to the Lakota bands and to the Arapaho and asked them to go to war against the whites. So an alliance was formed. Lakota included Red Cloud, American Horse, High Backbone, Crazy Horse, the Braveheart Society. Northern Cheyennes included Dull Knife, Little Wolf, the Crazy Dog Society, Northern Arapaho, Black Coal, Eagle, and Little Chief were some of the prominent leaders who formed this coalition. And in a somewhat rare piece of history, the tribes really tactically united and coordinated, which was different than normal cultural procedures, which warfare is a very individual thing. This period between 66 and 68 is typically called Red Cloud's War. Again, there were other leaders who really played a huge part in the actual encounters. But the most famous encounters include the Fetterman Battle on December 21st in 66. Then the summer after that, the Hayfield fight near C.F. Smith in Montana on August 1st, and the Wagon Box fight on August 2nd in 67. And in that 3-year period of accelerated warfare, through archival research, researchers have documented 165 engagements between basically Casper and the Wyoming border. So a lot of engagements. It wasn't a small thing. Most well known is the Fetterman Battle. And on December 21st, 6 Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho decoys enticed Fetterman and Grumman with 79 men to go over Lodge Trail Ridge. This is taken from the fort towards Lodge Trail Ridge, chased them over into the waiting arms of the rest of the coalition. And of course, they were completely rubbed out in about 45 minutes. The tribes don't call it the Fetterman Battle. Their spiritual leader had a premonition that they would have 100 soldiers in their hands by the end of the day. So hence this battle is called 100 in the hand by tribal historians. That's looking back up High Backbone Ridge, now called Fetterman Ridge. And in the background is Lodge Trail Ridge. So the infantry and the cavalry came over where they had been told not to come over the ridge, but the scouts enticed them over the ridge and then out onto this ridge. And then the tribes were waiting and hiding on both sides and converged on them. There's the monument today at the Fetterman Battle. An interesting side note, we have advisors, and one of our advisors a number of years ago was the Northern Cheyenne gentleman, Bill Tallbull. And he would come to advise us on history, and he walked up and read that sign. At the very bottom of the sign, it says there were no survivors. And Bill said, "You know, your sign's wrong." What's wrong? He said, "I'm standing here." So there were survivors. Just an interesting and different perspective on history that we like to capture. And then the other two main battles, the Hayfield fight, were a coalition, primarily Northern Cheyenne, surrounded and attacked a hay cutting crew up by C.F. Smith right across the border in Montana. And that attack was pretty much repelled. And then the day later, and this was, again, part of this coordinated effort, a day later, right outside of Fort Fetterman, the Wagon Box fight on August 2nd. And again, the Indian attackers were withstood, and pretty important fight. And by the way, of course, the state of Wyoming has Fort Fetterman, and it also has, or Fort Kearney, and it also has the Fetterman battlefield and the Wagon Box battlefield. And our nonprofit association owns acres contiguous with Wagon Box. And so we manage that for preservation, and we have it under a grazing permit as well in the summer. So we had the 3 battles and all the incursions, and finally in 68 with the completion of the UP railroad line and just the cost of fighting the tribes in the Powder River as part of the Laramie Treaty of 68. The U.S. government agreed to abandon the forts and quit use on the trail. And so in August, after they watched the soldiers load up and march back to Fort Laramie, then the Northern Cheyenne came down and burned Fort Kearney. But it was the one really good instance in history where the tribes were coordinated and they won. Then in 1908, Colonel Carrington, who was in charge at Fort Kearney, and his wife, Frances Grumman Carrington, came back for the dedication of the monument at the Fetterman Battlefield. So today, there are still ruts, intact trail ruts along the historic route in Wyoming and in Montana, primarily on private land, some on BLM managed land, and some mileage on state land. But I would say predominantly private and then a good chunk on BLM and state. The state of Wyoming put up markers along the trail in 1914. The one on the left is along the Ross Road going up out of Douglas and Glen Rock. And then the sign on the right's at the end of the Ross Road on 187 as you're heading. So we've got signage. The state has signage along portions of the trail. A monument in Glen Rock at Deer Creek Station, which was also a telegraph station and a Pony Express station, and a small outpost for some of the military. Little park in Casper at Rashaw's Bridge, where most of the wagon trains took off in '64. And then if you go south out of Buffalo, Travang Road, and then the 6 Mile Road, the Crazy Woman Crossing, where there was a pretty major engagement between the tribes, a wagon train, and some of the military, there's a interpretive pullout and a parking area. And then at Fort Reno, or what was Fort Reno, again, another pullout and some interpretive signing. So as you go along the route, there's interpretive signing there. Yep, there's the monument at Fort Reno, 1914, and then a fairly new interpretive sign. And then, of course, a major spot is Fort Phil Kearny, which we support. In the Office and Interpretive Center. And again, our mission is the nonprofit. You know, we fund the bookstore for revenue. We host public programs. We've hosted about 3-4 programs this summer and had some really nice turnout. Been very pleased with those. We apply for grants. So we're right in the middle now of working through a grant, American Battlefield Protection Grant. And some of that's going to archival research in DC on documents. And then another piece of it was some LiDAR photography, so we could do the sensitive photography of possible trail ruts in some of the sites. So research and education and public programs, and trying to generate revenue for the site. So now the National Trails Act. So there's 2 major steps to the Trails Act. The first is congressional legislation by our US Congress. And the way the Trails Act reads is that an interest group or a community would approach the congressional delegation and ask for a feasibility study. So that's where we're at. We would like to go to our congressional delegation and ask for legislation that would initiate the feasibility study. The feasibility study is undertaken by the Secretary of Interior. And when they do the feasibility study, they have public meetings and a formal comment period. And one of the things that they want to measure is local community desirability for national listing. So we just think it's really important to see if we can get to a feasibility study and get all of our neighbors and community members to the table and talk about what the benefits are, concerns, and have that feasibility team that's working for Secretary of Interior answer those questions. So that's the first step. The second step then, if the feasibility study determines that the Bozeman Trail is worthy of designation, then we would go back to Congress a second time and ask for the formal designation legislation. So two doors to walk through. There's about 11 criteria that they try to answer under the feasibility study. One is that they have to identify a continuous route, and they do that from historic maps and journals. It does not have to be physically intact, but they want to have confidence that you could, from a map and from historic documents, follow it. It has to be nationally historically significant. In 2002, the Park Service and the Western History Association, which are academic historians, did a study of about 6 or 8 Western trails, and they concluded the Bozeman Trail was nationally significant, primarily for the U.S. military campaign against the tribes. So we have that national significance in hand. They gave us confidence to go forward and put some miles on the cars. They also look for recreation and educational opportunities. Both things are in existence now, and where we could add to recreation and educational opportunities along the trail corridor. And they'll also look at potential economic benefits to local economies. So that ties into our objective and our goal to help ourselves. We have some objectives as the proponents. If you read the Trails Act, there is provision for land acquisition. Now, the Trails Act covers both scenic trails and historic trails. So there's a mix of trail types. We would not ask for land acquisition. And if you look at the amendments to the National Trails Act, when they add a new historic trail, they will amend the act. And there's language right there that says, and as part of this, no land acquisition. So we don't want land acquisition. We don't need it. We also are opposed to any federal overreach on private or state lands. And again, and I'll get to it in a couple of slides. There's specific language that says there will be no federal overreach. What our nonprofits really want to do is, with the designation, we want to draw more visitors to the interstate corridor, which is really pretty much follows the trail. Not exactly. So we really don't want to send visitors from far away on the Ross Road or the 6 Mile Road. What we really want to do is send them along the interstate corridor so they can stop off at the museum in Bighorn or at KC, or stop at our state historic site. And it's the same with the folks with our Montana. That's what we're really focused on. And then finally, there is some concern about federal overreach. So in a minute, I want to talk a little bit about current legislation for the Chisholm Trail and the Western Livestock Trail in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. And we're watching that right now. We think it'll be a good model for us. So public outreach. Here are our goals as the nonprofit proponents. First of all, we simply wanted to ensure that everybody in our communities knew what we were going to ask for. And we just wanted people to know what our effort was and what our intent was. Secondly, we want to take every opportunity we possibly could to garner understanding of how this National Historic Trail process works. And then finally, we are seeking support for the congressional legislation. So we're asking for letters of support to our delegations. We've used a lot of different methods. We started with personal contacts. Once we'd made some key stakeholder personal contacts, then we did a news release. We've got a project website. We've got a project email. I submitted a briefing paper and a Q&A document to the committee for your review. And we have a little historic overview. And then anytime we get an invitation, we do presentations. I like talking about history, so it's not hard to get me somewhere with a slideshow. And the other thing we're doing right now is we're inviting tribes down to visit with us about the history and their history. So we're now starting visits by the tribal historic preservation officers. day before yesterday, I had Standing Rock down for a whole day, walking the battlefields. And we've had Northern Cheyenne down, and we're trying to set up visits by other tribes just to get their perspective and get their input. It would make the telling of the history really whole. So just to kind of walk through who we have talked to. Well, the first thing we did is we had a joint meeting with Wyoming SHPO and the BLM field offices for Casper and Buffalo. As a cultural resource specialist, I wanted to know about the resource management plans and how they were going to handle historic properties. And I'll go over that in just a bit. So we met with them. We felt like we were on solid footing. We don't think this is going to change any of the protection measures that the BLM currently has in place. Then contacted Governor Gordon's staff. I had known Joe Budd from my Forest Service days, so I called Joe because I knew him. But we just wanted to let them know, and the congressional staffs, that we were getting ready to do the public outreach. And we gave them our information. So just a heads up to begin with. And then we emailed or sent letters to the representatives and Congress people in Wyoming from those counties that we felt that the trail went through. The county commissioners, and then we formally sent letters to the Indian tribes, to their chairpersons. Then after that, then our next round was state and county travel and tourism associations, Wyoming Stock Growers Association, Petroleum and Mining Associations, and Wyoming County Commissioner Associations. And I've had face-to-face meetings with each of those groups. And I just want to say they were very courteous and gave me their time. And then we moved on to tribal historic preservation officers and tribal elders, state and local historic preservation organizations, trail associations, museums, SEFT historic sites, and historians. So those groups who are doing the same work that we're doing. And then finally, we did hard copy letters to 225 landowners. And we selected those landowners who own 160 acres or more, where we felt the historic map showed that the trail most likely crosses their property, or at least borders their property. We did that for Converse, Campbell, Johnson, and Sheridan counties. And I'm just going to be honest, we couldn't interface with the GIS database for Natrona. No matter how we tried, we couldn't do it. So just being honest there and saying I'm hoping that landowners in Natrona County, through our other methods, will hear about it. So let me go back. So in response from the landowners, we did get some positive responses. People are supportive of the national trail effort and think it's a good idea. If you have intact segments of the trail on you, you can engage in preservation. You can even go for grants for preservation efforts if you want to. But we did get a number of letters of concern from landowners. So, and they fall into two general categories. One is simply federal overreach. And we even had people say, I know the Trails Act is fine, but somebody's gonna, somehow use it. And so it's just a general concern with federal overreach. And I've lived here a long time and I get it. And then number two, energy development. So particularly landowners who were in a split estate setting with federal and private. And was it going to impact them and prevent them from doing those things? The other interesting thing is some of the people who are opposed to any kind of potential federal overreach also said that they certainly supported us at the local and state level, the work that we're doing, and would be happy to help us and work with us. So it's not about historic preservation at all, or preserving our history. It's the federal piece that has people concerned. So from the National Trails Act, there's two sections that are important to me. Section 3.3. Only those selected lands on federally owned lands in which meet National Historic Trail criteria are included as federally protected components of a National Historic Trail. So for me, the Trails Act specifically says we're not going to do federal overreach. And the Trails Act was enacted in 1968, so we're running 53 years. And I did mention that under the trails, National Trails criteria, there is a criteria for purchase of land. Under Section 5, this piece, you can acquire land, but only with the consent of the landowner. When you look at the Trails Act and they do an amendment and add a new National Historic Trail, this is the exact language that many of them have. It says, we're not going to purchase land. I mentioned the Chisholm Trail legislation. So right now they are in the second step. So they've completed the feasibility study and now they're ready to do the final legislation to list the Chisholm Trail as a National Historic Trail. And this spring so they've introduced the bills, one on the House, one on the Senate side. Representative Ron Estes of Kansas introduced HR 8771, and Senator Jerry Moran of Kansas entered Senate the S 4905. So they're introduced. They didn't move on them this year, so we'll see what happens in the fall. The reason we're tracking it is that the Chisholm Trail and the Western Stock Trail, they cross private land in Kansas, and that's ranch land. And the ranchers were concerned about federal overreach. And so they've added additional language about protection of private land rights. And landowners in Kansas are on board with them introducing the final legislation. So I think that we should do the feasibility study, and I think we should track how this legislation plays out. I think this would be a good model for us. And I hope that it would allay fears of federal overreach.
Okay. And
That's what I
Mr.
have.
McKee, how much longer is your presentation? Because I want to allow time for public comment as well.
Not just less than 5 minutes.
Okay.
Good, thank you very much. So I will talk about the BLM RMPs. So right now, the bottom line is that designation of the Bozeman Trail as a National Historic Trail will not require revisions to their RMPs. Specifically, they already have protection measures in place for intact segments of the Bozeman Trail because it's eligible for the National Register.
And RMP stands for?
Resource Management Plan.
Okay.
So they know that the Bozeman Trail is eligible for the National Register. And so when they go out to look at a project, they'll look for intact trail segments. And if they have intact trail segments that add to that eligibility or support it, then they have avoidance measures in place. And my point is, in my read of their RMPs, is that if you went out 5 years from now to look at the same project in the same location and it was now a National Historic Trail, the protection measures are already in place.
Right.
So that's our read on the RMPs. No change from current. There are restrictions currently, but we wouldn't add any to them. On state land, SHPO provides comments on proposed projects. To provide comments, again, the trail segments must be intact and retain historic integrity and be within the parcel boundary. And so their standard is surface occupancy or use within a quarter mile or visual horizon of any historic trail or road, which is ever closer. So the point being is that if you went out on state land tomorrow and wanted to do a project and you had intact trail segments, this recommendation would be given to the state land board. And if you went out 5 years from now, same place, same intact trail segment, but now it's National Historic Trail, same avoidance measure. So we don't think we add any complications. So I am getting to the end. So how can you help? My ask today were two things, just understanding of what our intent was and some of the background. And then, yes, we'd love letters of recommendation or verbal support to our congressional delegation to do the feasibility study. You can learn more about us if you just go to fortphilkearney.com. You can see our documents on this national trail effort, but you can also see the other things that we're doing. And to contact us, there's our email on this project. Again, the benefits worthy of designation, increased visitation and revenue at museums and sites, strengthen our grant applications, enhance education and preservation, benefit local communities, and keep our sites relevant now and for the future. We thank you for your time today, and thank you for letting me go a little longer, Chairman.
Mr. McKee, thank you. This was very informative. I know much of this history, but I appreciate that. It's nice to get a refresher. Chairman Ellis, did you have some comments? No? Committee questions? Representative Hunt?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, so I take it from the information here that when it comes to on a case-by-case basis of these designations by Congress, that there's some wiggle room for self-tailoring. I mean, you're talking about with the Chisholm Trail and the act introduced by Representative Estes and Senator Moran, that they've added additional protections in there for private land. And I'm assuming that that's some sort of a bit of tailor-made for the Chisholm Trail Act specifically that goes above and beyond what's established in the National Trails Act. Is that correct?
Chairman Flitner, Representative Hunt, yes, that's correct. So they really tailored it to meet the concerns of their constituents. And so that's why we're so interested in watching it. We want to see how it goes through Congress and how Interior reacts to a tailor-made with that extra protection. That's important to us.
Quick follow-up.
Sure.
So has that been the case with prior designations with the other trails that have been designated, or have special adjustments, special accommodations been made in those cases? One, and two, I think you answered it already, but have there been any lawsuits or other legal wrangling with prior designations over the past 50 plus years that the act has been in effect?
Mr. McKee.
Chairman Flitner and Representative Hunt, I don't know of any other specific tailor-made ones. So the Chisholm Trail might be a real interesting new adaptation. And I do not personally know of any lawsuits, but there may well have been. So I don't know the answer.
Very good. Committee? Yes. Representative Winter.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. McKee, what kind of cooperation do you get from the different tribes in your efforts here to get this trail and maybe even the Chisholm Trail? Are the Indians involved in that management or cooperation in any way?
Mr. McKee.
Chairman and Representative Winter, don't know about the Chisholm Trail. For us, a huge stepping stone would be to get support from the Crow, because a fairly large length of the Bozeman Trail goes across Crow Agency. In our initial discussions, the Tribal Historic Preservation officers are supportive of the idea, both for Crow, who have a vested interest because the trail's on them, but the Northern Cheyenne and the Lakota we've talked to also have an interest, and their interest is having the opportunity to engage with a feasibility team and directly add their history to the bigger picture. So I think there's great opportunity. In our initial read is there's going to be support.
Okay. Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just maybe a point of clarification. I think anytime we're talking about like Indian nations, like we talk about the state is, the tribes. That's kind of the official entity, like which tribal governments or which tribes you're working with. So I just wanted to make that kind of point. But I wanted to thank you for all your work. I know you and I spoke months and months ago, and since then, it looks like you've been visiting with other entities. I just really appreciate all the work you've put into supplementing what we talked about a long time ago. So thank you for this update and all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, I think Mr. Stark's going to need to add a horse to it. That's actually the first military vehicle, right? Right. Okay, thank you. Representative Sweeney?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So you mentioned the need from the legislature. I didn't really understand the ask of us. So wouldn't we need to provide like a joint resolution from the legislature, or what would be the particular ask?
Mr. McKee?
Chairman, Representative Sweeney, resolution would be very good. I know that's what the tribal governments are considering as a tribal resolution. So that would be wonderful. That would be great support, would be a formal resolution.
Okay, thank you. And I think Representative Banks had his hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, just a really quick question. Does the Bozeman Trail right now not have any kind of designation at all?
Mr. McKee?
Chairman Flitner, yes, it's been listed as eligible for the National Register. And in fact, a number of years ago, the Wyoming SHPO office actually formally listed about half a dozen to 8 segments in Wyoming. It was a little bit unusual because normally you designate the trail and then you over time add intact segments. So this was the other way around for some reason, but there are intact segments that are on the National Register, and the whole trail itself is eligible. That's what they have right now.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. McKee. And at this point, I think we'll open it up to public comment. Do we have anybody in the room who would like to speak to this? Oh, and I see Representative Knapp has a question. Sorry. You're muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had one question. Thank you for the information. Number one, very interesting topic. One of my first elementary school reports was on the Fetterman battle. So, but of the 225 landowners that you sent letters out to, how many support letters did you get back, and how many concern letters did you get back? Do you have that information?
I would say about a half a dozen of each, but I'm going right off the top of my head.
Okay. Follow up? No?
No, thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Okay. Oh, Representative Sweeney.
So does State Parks Cultural Resources have any comment on this? I'm assuming, like, is Fort Fetterman separate or not part of the parks, our state parks?
Dave, would you like to step up to the table just for a moment, if you wouldn't mind? Since you're our lone representative from State Parks in the room.
Madam Chairman, we've been aware of this process that's been going on. We've been in conversations with Mr. McGee. Since it is a federal designation, it really is nothing that State Parks is going to weigh in on, at least initially at this point in time. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, very good. Chairman Ellis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question's for Mr. McKee. And a resolution, that requires a very formal process on our end. Would a letter from our committee have the same effect? I'm just kind of curious. If we were to, because we could vote on that today, we can draft a letter saying you came presented, and then send that letter off today, and then that's kind of off our to-do plate. We do a resolution, we've got to take it through the whole process. And so I'm just kind of curious if you have a preference or.
Madam Chairman, a letter would be good. I'm not savvy enough to know your process, but any kind of a formal support would be wonderful.
Okay, you'll take what you can get.
That's
what you're
right.
saying. All right.
Read between the lines.
Yes, sir. Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate it. And public comment? Come on down, Mr. Representative of all commissioners in Wyoming.
Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee, Jeremiah Reeman here on behalf of the County Commissioners Association. Since we were referenced in the presentation, I thought I might just offer a couple of comments. First, I want to really compliment Mr. McKee. He and his group have been tremendous about the outreach. It's been critical for them, and they really have followed through with that. So they have met with us. They've met with some of our committee members about this particular topic. We haven't offered up a letter of support at this point in time. That's not to say we won't. We haven't heard major concerns from commissioners, but we're looking at some of the same issues that you heard in the presentation and making the same outreach to some of our partners to make sure that this is something that they would be supportive and we'll see where we get through the process. We may ask that it is tailor-made, that there are some of those protections that ensure that the important interests that we're considering, whether that's private land or federal land development or that split estate development, that those concerns are addressed. So, but in any regard, I just wanted to get up and say we are looking at this and again, compliment Mr. McKee for the work that they've been doing. It has been tremendous. It is helpful.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Appreciate that. Okay. In committee, I think personally, I'm not ready to move forward with this. I've got family that has a ranch on the Ross Road. And so I'd really like to reach out to them personally and just address this with them directly, just because I have that ability. And then maybe our Natrona County legislative representatives might be able to reach out to any landowners they may know. And then maybe at our next committee, we can decide whether or not we might sponsor a joint resolution or just a letter on your behalf, but that would give us a little more time as well. And committee, I'd welcome your thoughts. Representative Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I guess I would agree on that. I guess this was at least the first that I was aware of these efforts, and I certainly applaud the presentation and the information today. But I think that's probably a good idea. Allow us to kind of digest this and get some, well, I mean, not all of us are have constituencies or districts directly affected by it, but to go home and get kind of temperature of the water and come back in the fall with a more informed decision one way or the other. So thank you.
All right, Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Maybe to allay some of the concerns, I might have a little chairman's prerogative to work with county commissioners associations and others, maybe some landowner groups, and see if we can have a draft letter that we can maybe put on our agenda for us to even look at. So that if we see some of that qualifying language of, we want to have, condition our support on the fact that these, criteria are met as this project goes forward, but at least then we'd have language to work off of. So I just thought I'd kind of maybe even give the committee an advance notice that maybe we don't take action today, but anyone who wants to be involved in drafting a letter and helping craft what that looks like, that we can maybe bring forward for us to at least look at for our next meeting, just something to be aware of. I think I'll work on that.
I think that's a great idea, and we can certainly get together and do some homework. So, because it is a great idea, I just think all of us have such great distrust of our federal government that's why we're proceeding with caution.
Madam Chairman, last thing too is it's been a long day, but I brought a really large map that's fairly accurate. So when you adjourn, if somebody just wants to take a look.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Representative Winter, you got to do that to me.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think this private landowner issue is really important for this whole project. And Mr. McKee, you mentioned that you thought there was 6 responses of the 285 landowners that you had contacted. Maybe we should, is that correct?
I think I responded, there was about half a dozen positive and about half a dozen
Okay,
negative.
yes, that's right. I remember now. It seems like there's maybe some more effort needs to be put into contacting those landowners again in some manner. I don't know how right now, but it just seems like we should make a real concentrated effort to contact those folks and get a feeling from most of them if possible.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
Representative Winter, I just want to second that, because one thing in the long run is that our association wants to continue to meet our mission at the local and community and state level. So we're not looking for controversy. So the more outreach we can do, the more understanding and the more learning we can do. That's really important to us. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. McKee. This was most enlightening. We appreciate all your efforts, and we'll work on this between now and our next meeting, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay, and so that brings us to the end, and so we thank everybody for being here today. And
Madam Chairman,
yes,
we
yes,
have
ma'am.
public comment online from Myrna Leteski.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize we had anybody online. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a 2-minute statement. I don't know if you have time. If not, I could email it to you also.
Well, why don't you email it to us, but go ahead and give us a few, if you can, just briefly give us an overview of your statement.
Sure. Well, I'm Myrna Leteski, and I wanted to encourage support of the feasibility study for the Bozeman Trail as a National Historic Trail. I work for Beartooth Resource Conservation and Development up in Carbon County, Montana. And we work in a 5-county region in South Central Montana. And the Bozeman Trail goes through all 5 of our counties. And we just see just excellent economic and recreational development possibilities with the Bozeman Trail. And so we've been working with partners in Wyoming and Montana and the Crow tribe trying to develop some of those. So I go into a little more detail, and I can certainly send that on to you, but we did want to voice our support for Dave McKee's efforts and have been working with both Dave and his team and also our Montana.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate that. And thank you for taking the time to address the committee today. And if you wouldn't mind sending that and then possibly joining us for our next meeting and giving us an update on how things stand in Montana with all of the moving parts that you have on your end too, with regard to tribal relations and landowners and all the players in Montana, and we'd be most interested in that as well. So thank you.
Thank you for your time, Madam Chairman, and the committee members.
Very good. Thank you. Oh, we have one question.
Madam
Representative
Chairman,
Hunt.
I sorry to belabor this, just real briefly. Whoever would like to answer this, has the Montana legislature taken up this issue in any formal fashion or had any discussions about it on a formal basis?
Yes, can you answer that? Either one of you. Sorry, Mr. McKee.
Sorry. I'm here. I use my time. We've talked to staffs.
Okay.
And for both state level. And then I should have mentioned for the congressionals. So we've had discussions with Cheney Barrasso and Lummis's DC staffs. And then we had about a 35-minute Zoom with Senator Lummis the end of May. So we've had an opportunity to make our initial presentation to her. And then for our other 2, their staffs have engaged with us. So that's where we're sitting. But we didn't want to make the formal request until we'd done everything we could for outreach.
Very good.
So, and we said we'd take as long as we needed to.
Well, we waited this long, so
Yeah.
thank you. Okay.
Madam.
In Montana, well, we'll get answers from her at the next meeting. So, okay. Well, committee, oh, Chairman Ellis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is about tomorrow, so if
Okay.
now. Committee members, tomorrow I'll be running us through the meeting, and you'll note that we have, we'll be getting an update from State Parks and Cultural Resources. Many of us looked at the Trails building yesterday, and so we can discuss that bill draft. We took a tour, as you'll recall, of the State Museum and wanted to discuss possible next steps. We've been visiting about self-sustaining agency funding. And along those lines, those are the approved agenda items that we have for our agenda. I've mentioned to a few of you that this is my third week driving up to Fremont County this month, and I'm very aware that there's a controversial issue surrounding Sinks Canyon and a proposal to develop that area for climbers at the Via Ferrata. We've gotten a few emails asking that their public comment be included in the record. And so far I was fine including public comment that's written and submitted to the committee. But to the extent that there might be interested people traveling from the Lander area to Du Bois tomorrow, it really is not on our agenda to take public comment. And, the reason for this, I just wanted to make this clear because I would hate for folks to make that drive. Because we don't have Via Ferrata on there, the difficulty in accepting even limited public comment is that supporters of that, don't see it on our agenda. So maybe they don't make the effort to make the drive. And so I think it might kind of skew our knowledge of what's going on with that particular issue. So certainly if you're, have strong feelings about this project one way or another, feel free to email committee members. But I just wanted to really impress on folks that tomorrow we want to be respectful of time for our staff. We have these agenda and topics all approved. And so please, to the public listening and people in the audience, we're really going to stick to this agenda topic as it's publicly put forth tomorrow. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right.
Oh, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, along those lines, I did want to add, if you are concerned about the Via Ferrata, State Parks has a meeting on August 30th at 7 p.m. It will be held at the Lander Community and Convention Center located at 950 Buena Vista Drive. So very soon after our meeting, there will be a public meeting where this will be more vigorously debated and looked at. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And with that, staff, thank you. Everybody, thank you for your time, and we are adjourned.